Most of the drugs we take that are approved by the regulators don't have any data behind them that has been confirmed. They're based on studies funded by drug companies that have never been confirmed, Lens. And it's billions and billions every year, probably $100 billion every year that banks get fined for committing fraud, screwing their customers, lying, taking money. You know, the World Bank just lost $40 billion that was supposed to go to climate change, something.
David, don't you just hate that when that happens? Where
Honestly,
did my $40 billion?
Where did that money go?
Take the first step towards online privacy. Get NordVPN.
When tyranny becomes law, rebellion becomes a duty. So said Thomas Jefferson. Go to bit.ly/lawful tax protest or bit.ly/make war history and find out why it is a criminal offence to pay central government or local government taxes in the UK. And let's make war history. There are scams and there are scams and there are scams, and that's what I'm going to be talking about in this video. Hi everybody, I am joined by David Siegel. David has been on this channel many times before, but not enough times. And he's going to introduce himself in a moment, and we're going to be talking about what he says are some of the 10 biggest, I suppose, contemporary scams. Now, before I introduce him, please subscribe, follow me on X. If you're watching this on YouTube, well, depending upon what David's going to say, this might not show up on YouTube because of their censorship, but also support my work on Rumble and ODYSEE and join my official Telegram announcements channel. Hey, David, thank you so much for making yourself available.
Rich, the reason we're here is because of a scam.
Oh yes, there is. I reached out to you and I said, listen, will you do a video about this scam? And then you said, yeah, I'll do that, but there are these other scams as well. Yes,
there's a guy there. You should be proud that there's a guy scamming people on Twitter, pretending to be you, contacting people. And he contacted me. Oh, Rich, hey, I hadn't seen you in a long time. Hey, good to see you. And he starts chatting me up, and then I realize, oh, you've got an admirer.
You know, I've met 3 crypto riches on Telegram, and none of them were me.
Oh, it's amazing!
It's amazing. I thought I was going to meet myself, and I could interview myself and ask questions. And
so there are scams everywhere.
Say to myself, "Why did you do that? That was a silly thing to do," and hopefully get a sensible answer. But hey ho. Okay, David, do you want to introduce yourself, what you do, and a little bit about yourself?
Sure, I'm a lifelong entrepreneur. I'm a Silicon Valley tech entrepreneur for a long time, and then New York, and then Switzerland, and finally London, where we met, working on crypto projects that I had raised money for. And now I'm back in the United States, in Washington, D.C., which is a crazy place I don't recommend for any. It's maybe nice to visit for a few days, but don't live here. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to talk about scams today.
Before you do that, before we get into the game, you also do coaching and consultancy.
Sure. Right. So I'm kind of reinventing myself. I'm pretty much out of crypto because it was so overregulated. I got tired of spending my time with lawyers. And so I'm on the new, a new wave that isn't AI. It's longevity. What happened was, Rich, I read this amazing book by Peter Attia about how to live longer. And it turns out to be mostly exercise and build bone and muscle that you keep so that you don't waste away when you're older. And it's a phenomenal program. And he's a doctor and the thought leader. And I'm putting together a coaching program to help people actually do it, because the book is a bestseller. The book is a New York Times bestseller, but it's not the book that makes you live longer. It's what you do.
Yes.
That makes you live longer. So I'm now a longevity coach.
Okay. And just on that, I haven't read that book. I did look into Peter Attia's work about 10, 12 years ago when I was getting into paleo and everything. And I've been high fat, low carb for many, many years, which is quite interesting for a Punjabi going to Pakistan. Bete, what do you mean you no naan? What do you mean no roti and no rice?
Right.
Just give me the meat. Just give me the meat, right? So I do get it. And I know he's fit. And as you and I get older, building muscle is more and more important. Gets more and more important, strengthening bones. So how can somebody contact you if they wanted to have the longevity?
I'm at the infinitegameoflife.com. Infinitegameoflife.com.
Okay. And then also you are a successful business entrepreneur.
I've started maybe a dozen companies, sold a couple. Yeah. I've had my share of failures as an entrepreneur, which is always a learning experience, but I'm now helping business owners and executives with their biggest problems. Yeah. And that's also at infinitegameoflife.com. That's under the business category. It's all there.
So people can contact you with regards to business coaching, and they can also contact you with regards to longevity coaching. But now we're going to talk, and I'll have the links in the description below, infinitegameoflife.com. But now we're going to talk about scams.
Right. And you'll get your check for the advertisement. Don't worry.
Just a couple of Bitcoin will do, David, all right?
Oh, perfect. No problem. All right. Yeah, I want to talk about a bunch of things with you over the next couple of weeks, perhaps. And I want to start kind of at the top and this is from a talk I gave to Tom Nelson. You're probably familiar with him. Tom Nelson. He's got a fantastic podcast about climate where he has all kinds of climate experts talking about what's going on and what's going wrong and how can we fix it. And I gave a talk on how the whole climate thing is really not about climate. It's about money and political manipulation and one world government, globalism, and all this stuff. And it really comes from that concept that there are people tell me the climate scam is the biggest scam in history. And I say, oh, no. It might be in the top 10, but we've got some serious scams to go over. So
you're not talking about contemporary scams. I mean, some of them are going on now.
Oh, no, I'm talking about contemporary. I'm talking about what's going on right now.
But they may be roots. They may have started some time ago.
Oh, they did.
Okay.
Well, the first one is banking.
Banking is a scam? No, bankers are angels. They just
the financial system is a total scam. And let's quantify it, banking worldwide is about a $20 trillion business. In the United States, it's about $2 trillion. And that's all financial services, including stocks and bonds and everything. But actual banking in the United States is about $2 trillion. And if we could look worldwide, we'd say maybe about 3 trillion people or 4 trillion people are banked and 4 trillion people are not banked.
4 billion, not 4 trillion.
4 billion people are banked and 4 billion people are not banked. Right. And the bankers say, well, this is a problem. We've got 4 billion people that we have to, get banked. Okay, forget the kids. Maybe we've got 3 billion people who are unbanked. And I say, oh, no, we've got to go the other way.
Okay.
4 billion people have to get unbanked
yes.
to have a real financial system.
What is it about banking that makes it a scam?
Right. So first of all, there are a lot of rules imposed on the banking system, most of which are, I tell people this all the time. There's really only one form of government in the world, and that's kleptocracy.
Right.
It doesn't matter if it's China, the United States, Venezuela. It's all the same. It's all just people taking for themselves. And a great example in the banking system is this G20 rule called KYC and know your customer and anti-money laundering, which is meant to track everything so they can find the bad guys and prevent them from getting into the banking system, or at least if they can track them down using this information. So every time you get an account anywhere, anytime you send a bunch of money, they want to know, well, what's the purpose of this transfer? And there's a compliance officer on the other end trying to figure out whether you're a good person or a bad person, right? Passing judgment on your activities and watching and surveilling you. And that costs something like $600 billion a year to do. And it saves, and they catch about $200 billion worth of bad guy money launderers. And meanwhile, every single year, $3 trillion worth of money is laundered, mostly through banks. Banks
and by banks.
No, but this is set up for money laundering. If you wanted to have the perfect system for laundering money, you would have today's banking system. That's how you do it.
Right.
Just go to Google and type in banks fined for AML violations or for fraud or for violence and how much, and then add the word billion just so you get the big ones. And it's billions and billions every year. It's probably $100 billion every year that banks get fined for committing fraud, screwing their customers, lying, taking money. The World Bank just lost $40 billion that was supposed to go to climate change. Something.
David, don't you just hate that when that happens?
Honestly,
my $40 billion.
Where did that money go? It's got to be here somewhere.
Which jacket is my $42 billion in?
This is just institutionalized kleptocracy, right? It didn't go nowhere. It went somewhere. They know exactly where it went, and they're not going to tell us.
Yeah, but also what that brings to mind is the kleptocracy done by the various defense departments in the UK. No doubt.
We're not there yet.
Oh, is that one of the scams? Okay, sorry.
We're just doing so in banking in the United States. It's about a $2 trillion scam. All right, and we don't need people banked. Right, all the fees, Look at the giant buildings in almost any city. Look in your city, HSBC, giant tower, right?
Yeah.
All these banks have huge towers. They're filled with floors and floors and floors of humans pitchforking data from one workstation to the other. And none of that is needed. We could do almost all of it on a blockchain and some other trustless systems, and just,
Okay.
forget about all the intermediary business is just huge.
Yeah. I was afraid
Right.
you were going to say something like
Now,
that.
if you want to understand the banking system better, I'm going to give references for each of these. I'd like people to read a book called The Money Illusion by Scott Sumner. He's my teacher on monetary policy, and the way he explains it is that the central banks are always putting out fires like inflation and dealing with economic growth, but they're the arsons who cause the fires. And then they pretend to put them out badly and screw it up. And that really costs. That, inflation will kill your economy. It will kill your lower class, your poor, your medium, your middle class.
Yep.
Inflation will destroy any wealth creation that people make, because they just have to keep pouring more and more money into buying stuff. And I'm talking about real inflation, 10, 15, 20%, 40%, places that have dictators that are just printing up money, even in England, even in the United States.
Sorry, when you said dictators, I did think you were talking about Keir Starlin.
For example. But remember, the central banks are separate. So it's the people who run the central banks who don't know what they're doing. And I hope we're going to have a talk about money and discuss this in more detail. So that's scam number one.
Right.
If you've got graphics, we could do scam number two.
Okay. Your BIC is good enough, right? Scam number two.
Next one, number two, is defense. Defense spending is just arbitrary. It just grows and grows. It's the military industrial complex that feeds on itself. It doesn't really care whether there's wars or not. They're certainly not there to prevent war.
Mm-hmm.
There's no incentive for that. But here's the thing about defense, okay? And I'm not a defense expert, but I want to drive home one critical point about defense, and that is the precautionary principle. What's that?
Being careful, not doing harm.
No, the precautionary principle is a doctrine that says that if there's some small chance of something very bad happening, you have to eliminate that chance. You have to make it zero. The precautionary principle says you have to do everything you can to eliminate the possibility of something bad happen. And that's how we get into most wars. If you remember 15 years ago, Colin Powell showing up at the United Nations with a little vial of probably baby powder or whatever, and saying, this much anthrax could destroy, a whole, and therefore, because there might be this much anthrax, or there might be some weapons of mass destruction that we've never seen and that our satellites can't detect, but there might be, then we have to go wage war and take over some other country. And it only cost, I think, $3 trillion and 400,000 lives, and destroyed the country. And that's all because of the doctrine of the precautionary principle, which Dick Cheney, advocated. And most of these big mucky mucks in the military industrial complex talk about it all the time. We have to. What if it goes wrong, and what if that small thing happens? Then they'll blame us that we didn't do something.
Yep.
This gets rolled out all the time. Look at Winston Churchill. He saved the world. World War II. It might be really bad. It might be worse than we think. Okay, so because of the precautionary principle, we got into the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the Iraq War, the Balkan War, and it goes on and on and on because it's a sales tactic.
Yep. No, I'm really clear about this one. Like, all the money going into Ukraine, for example, is landing back in the pockets of the arms companies and the lobbyists and the politicians, and Zelensky takes his cut, and it's all laundered.
It's an incentive problem, as always, just with the banks. It's an incentive problem, and I just want to give you the antidote. The antidote is cost-benefit analysis. Something bad might happen. Okay, fine, and we're going to encounter this again. What does it cost, and what does it get you, and what insurance does it buy? And what are the other options we might look at for spending the same amount of money to maybe get the same or better benefit, or least harm, right? Nobody ever does cost benefit. It's not in the government. You'll never see it. No. It's not in the military industrial complex because it's not a sales tool. Okay. All right. Number 2. So it's really just
Bing. Number 3.
Number 3, more kleptocracy.
Yay.
Religion.
Okay.
Religion is a $1.2 trillion business in the United States. It's a serious business. There's a lot of money trading hands. I don't know what it is worldwide, but it's probably 5, 6, 7, 8 trillion dollars worldwide, right? And it's a belief system that, once again, there's no foundation for it, and it's a kleptocracy. It's about really getting power over people, right? Getting them to give you their money, for them to sell you the indulgences or forgive you for whatever thing you didn't do, and make a fantastic killing at it. I mean, here in the United States, we have these giant mega churches with their own TV channels and 24/7 evangelical gospel entertainment. But it really is, I think, important for people to understand the incentives.
Okay. Now, do you also include sort of spiritual based beliefs and everything? Because you've got to have something for that, that gives people an explanation for the meaning of life, a connection to consciousness, and something that shapes a society's culture.
Well, if you believe in nonsense, it's fine. If you believe in stories, it's fine. But what I'm talking about here, Rich, is organized religion.
Right.
You can have as many healing crystals as you like. You're not going to destroy the economy.
No. You're not going to wage war, David. I got to tell you, right? For 10 years, I went to Quaker meetings.
Huh.
This is after the death of my first son over 20 years ago. A friend of mine suggested it to me, and I said, "Well, what do they do then?" They said, "Well, they just sit in silence." And I said, "Well, do they have a dogma? Do they say Jesus is the Son of God? Because that's antithetical for a Muslim, right? Jesus is a prophet, not the Son of God." And my friend said, "No, they don't say that. It's up to you." And then
it's pretty benign. Quakerism is very benign.
I couldn't find an example of Quakerism being used as a way of justifying the killing of others.
It hasn't
been done with other religions.
Right, it's not weaponized.
Yeah, it hasn't.
But the major religions are weaponized to the teeth.
Yep, Netanyahu, responsible for nuclear.
They are responsible for as much pain and suffering as practically anything else.
Yep,
and they get paid to do it.
Yep.
All right. So if you believe, if you want to look into theology and religion, this is your book.
The Blind Watchmaker by Richard Dawkins. Okay.
This is your guy, Richard Dawkins. And you might say, no, I have to study the big books and I have to learn more about religion. I have to have an overview of religion. You don't. You need to understand why religion exists in the first place and whether there's a cost benefit to it. Because again, a small number of people are benefiting tremendously and most of the rest of us are fish.
Yep. Okay. So we've had banking. We've had banking. We've had defense. Number 3, religion.
On to number 4. Education. This is easily one of the top 5 scams in history and in the world today. Education is worse than you think. If whatever you think about it, like being factory education and making pupils obedient and preparing them for war, which is kind of where a lot of schools started, or for factories, which is where many schools started, it's worse than that. The whole thing just feeds on itself. In the United States, I don't have the number in the trillions. I don't have the number for this in the United States. It's not just indoctrination, but the whole goal is to teach you what to think, not how to think.
Yeah. Well, I say, you may not know this, but my 20-year-old and 17-year-old never went to school. They were unschooled. They were unschooled. No nursery, no kindergarten, no school.
Unschooled is the way to go.
When they were 15, 16, they both wanted to go to college. I tried to talk them out of it. But you know what teenagers are like. So, okay, they went to college, right? And one of them for sure regretted it. I said, well, I told you, right?
Well, there's a social aspect that's helpful.
They've had plenty of social contacts hanging out with other kids, right?
Yeah.
That was all good. And I've read a lot of John Taylor Gatto, and from school is designed to train people in conformity, obedience, and compliance.
Right.
So then
Right.
we had people just
Right.
obediently lining up, rolling up their sleeves to have a medical intervention with no long-term data.
Unbelievable. But you notice that I was never in a business meeting in my entire life where we sat around the table and said, you know what we need? We need someone who can come in here and give us and answer a question, there are four answers of which one of which is right and three of which are wrong. We've got a big problem, and that's the person we need in here right now.
Yep.
No. Tests and grades are not part of the real world.
No. You haven't asked me what grade I got for being a vlogger.
For being a what?
A vlogger.
I want to know how the culture supports homeschooling in the UK, since you were part of it.
Yeah, in England and Wales, we call it home education. There's more unschooling than there is religious-based home education.
Interesting.
And in England and Wales, it's and actually in Scotland as well, it's really, really easy. So it's parents' duty to educate their children either by regular attendance at school or otherwise. We did otherwise, and it pretty much matches the same as what you might have in some of the southern states, the more liberty-loving states. No exams, no requirement for any curriculum. My kids played and played and played and played. My son bought Bitcoin when he was 11.
Nice.
He'd heard me talking about it, right? So he's done all right. And he had 4 or 5 businesses before he turned 18. Right. But that was all play for him. He was just playing, making money.
Yeah.
That was the game.
Right.
So it's very, very easy in England, Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland. But Keir Starlin at some point will change it because children are the property of the Stalinist state.
True.
All right, David, we got that one.
Watch out for the gulags, but I will give a plug here for 2 resources people can find out about education. This is the first.
Okay, I haven't read that one, but I agree.
This is the amazing Brian Kaplan, who has also a illustrated cartoon book on immigration that will open your eyes. This book really makes it clear. And if you want, the next part is my son's website, because my son Micah is 13. And hold on. So my son Micah is 13. He homeschools himself, and he wrote this. He wrote this book last year.
Wow.
I just want you to see what you can do if you're out of school.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And to think what he's missed out on, and how much he's not learned by writing
all the homework and all the math problems.
Yeah.
No, and he tells me, Dad, I'll learn math when I have to learn math. Why should I do a bunch of math problems? And I go, can't argue with that. Sorry.
I have covered home education a bit on my channel, and I've been on people's channels.
So his website,
the other author, John Taylor Gatto, Gatto, Dumbing Us Down, or History of an American Education. Any of his books, actually. Fabulous writer.
Excellent. Another writer is my son Micah on his website, which is roguescholaracademy.com. Roguescholaracademy.com. Come check it out and get your free PDF download of the book.
Fabulous.
All right. Moving on. Number 5?
I don't know.
5. Ding!
Ding. Okay.
Regulation. Government regulation is one of the biggest scams ever. And government regulation can be counted in number of physical paper pages. And there's a chart I don't have, but you see it on Elon Musk has shown it. Just the regulation and rules just keeps going up and up forever. Nobody ever reduces regulation. Ever. It just and almost no regulation is made with a sunset. It's just made forever, and then those people die off and leave, and then the next people come in. And why? Because it's all virtue signaling. Because something bad happens, and something must be done by the grown-ups. Yep. And so the grown-ups start making rules.
Okay, but I think there's also the incentive, but the nature of a bureaucracy is to keep expanding and justifying its own existence, like school does, but also to push back those Amish, those dangerous Pennsylvania Dutch people.
Yes.
They do need to be regulated. I mean, they didn't have the injections. They live in loving communities. They're peaceful.
They should go to jail.
Organic. They drink raw milk. We need to regulate them out of existence.
Oh my God. Their children run around without shoes. I mean, what is the world coming to?
Oh my God.
Seriously. Yeah. So regulation is really one of the big things that hold us back into the Stone Age. And I want to give a particular example that is my pet peeve, and that is professional licensing. Now, people aren't prepared for this conversation. So when I say we should have no professional licensing, they laugh. And they say, ha, 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 you want to have your brain surgeon who's not licensed? Ha, you try that. I'm going to stick with the guy who has a license. Really? Have you thought about this? Because practically anyone who's ever died in a hospital from an operation, from any procedure or any drug, has been given that by someone who's licensed. So so we don't know what the track record is of the unlicensed people because we don't ever get to run that experiment. They are not voodoo witch doctors. They could be people who are eminently qualified, but you have to judge them the same regardless of the license, because it depends on the person's qualifications, the person's experience, the person's outcomes, their track, record. Yep. This is how we should judge airline pilots, surgeons, lawyers. All of this licensing comes from bodies that get set up by the initial people who create these bodies for, professional oversight, and they do the exams and they give the certificates. And it's all magical hocus pocus, but what do you know? Those organizations are self-preserving.
Yeah. David, I would just want to share from my own experience as a social worker. So in the early 70s in England, on average, 2 children a week are killed by their parents.
Wow.
Now here we are, and the government have put in lots and lots of regulations and oversight and created more structures, the 1989 Children's Act, the Adoption Act, other children's acts, reorganized everything, and there's more oversight, and we have computer systems to record everything, right? And here we are in 2024, on average, 2 children every week are killed by their parents.
Killed by their parents, yeah.
It's made no change to that, but it's spawned this massive industry. And then what I noticed, because I qualified in 1994, the new intake, the recent intake, it's like they're trying to do social work by the book or something, some sort of checklist. Versus, I suppose, the gift of experience. Now, my mum was a qualified homeopath. She's self-taught. My father's an unqualified homeopath, also self-taught.
Sure.
I could go to either. And then you and I, we educated our kids. I don't have a teacher.
You take your chances everywhere. You take your chances with all this stuff. So the argument, I wouldn't fly on an airplane without a pilot with a pilot who hasn't had recent exams. I'm not saying hasn't had recent exams. I'm saying is unlicensed.
Yeah.
Because the license guarantees nothing.
Well, was it iatrogenic deaths? Deaths by doctors is one of the biggest causes of death.
Yeah. It's about 400,000 people a year here on drug interactions that don't work together, and there's about 700,000 a year on misdiagnosis.
And also, you're saying regulation is distinct from law or legislation.
Regulations are part of law. So criminal law is not regulation.
Yeah.
Regulation governs the behavior of companies and individuals in a certain domain.
Yeah.
Right. It's not fraud. It's not fraud. It's control of here's an example. Okay. A startup that is raising money. Mm-hmm. And this is true in the UK as well as the United States. A startup, and you talk to them, and their CEO, and he says, do you know somebody who'd put in £1 million for this business? Because we really want to create this great product and do this fantastic thing. And you go, oh yeah, I know, I've got a friend who might go for that. He says, well, if you'll bring us in £1 million, we'll pay you £50,000 as a finder's fee. Okay. So you call your friend Joe and say, hey Joe, I've got this fantastic startup that wants to raise money. Would you be interested? You've just broken the law. That phone call, that contact, you've just broken the law because you don't have the license to do capital introductions in the UK. And it's the same in the United States. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. People have gone to jail for this, and for making that phone call. People have been taken to court, and sometimes they slap the wrist and say, don't do it again. And the second time you do it, you're out.
Wow.
So this is the kind of regulation. I'm not really talking about fraud. I'm talking about over-regulation of
Overregulation. Like for example, the raw milk in the United States.
Or the realtor who sells you a house. God forbid. You could put an ad in the newspaper or online and say, I sell homes. Oh, really? We want to talk to you, the police say. Let's see you have a license to drive that home? Let's see it. Right? No, you can't do it. And because these organizations are set up by original people 40, 50, 80 years ago, and they are self-preserving, just like unions, their number one priority is themselves. Okay, and then I could go on and on, but if you want a reference on this, there is no book on overall. I've looked around. There's no book on the evil sort of negative effects of licensing overall, but industry by industry, you can find it, and you would go to mercatus.org, MERCATUS, mercatus.org. Fantastic organization that watches corruption and inefficiency.
Okay.
That's number, what have we got? 5. Now we're into 5. Hey, I only have 9. Oh, well, that's okay. Number 6.
Okay, number 6.
Number 6 is taxation. That's a pretty big one, right? And the problem is, again, it's the incentives. The more money you make, the more tax you pay. What's up with that?
Okay.
Right? That's a disincentive to make money. And in some places in Scandinavia, it's over 50%. So every dollar you make, you lose 55, 60 cents or a kroner or whatever it is. You lose 60%, and it gets all the way up to about 90% in some socialist countries. You only keep 10%. Right? But here in the United States, it's about 35%, and it's all the money you earn. But you don't have to do it that way. Nobody says we have to do it that way. That's just existing regulation that's been going on for a long time. The other way, and this is going to be short, the other way is to do a consumption tax. Now, I just want to lay out the idea of a consumption tax for people, if that's all right.
Mm-hmm.
A consumption tax is a national sales tax, and you have the VAT, which we don't. Most developed nations have a VAT. The United States doesn't. And that's generally for businesses, right? And it's generally a pain in the ass. You got to sort of show what part you are in the value chain along the way, and there's a lot of paperwork, right? And that's part of the problem. So here, paperwork-wise, I want to go into this. This is in the United States. Filing taxes in the United States is a $150 billion industry. Filing taxes. You know how long it takes the average Estonian to file her taxes? 10 minutes. It's all done on the mobile phone. 10 minutes, average. Some do it in 2 minutes. Some take as long as 17, 18 minutes to file their taxes. All right, so it's not about bureaucracy, it's about efficiency there. But no, in the United States, it's a $150 billion industry. And let's add this up. That's responsible for 6 billion hours of productivity lost, which in the market would be worth at least $150 billion again. And 10% of people, they don't collect. It goes uncollected. That's $400 billion in uncollected tax. United States collects about $4 billion in tax every year and spends about $6.5 billion. So, okay, little debt there. Continue to add the debt that continues to compound and create the national debt.
I would say it's a bigger scam. So
okay.
It grows because governments our overlords wanted to wage war.
Yes.
And our taxes don't pay for anything. All what they do is they borrow the money, pay the interest, but
right.
They could just print the fiat. They could just print the fiat and then off it would go. But taxes serve as a form of social control and redistribution of people's energy.
Well, we'll talk about printing fiat when we talk about money. That's a different conversation. But you're right that most of that money is wasted, but they can't even collect it. They're missing $400 billion a year that they're not collecting here in the United States. And how many tax collectors do they have in the United States? I think it's 350,000 people. work as tax collectors for the United States. All that can go away, and I just want to cut it short. All that can go away with a simple spending tax, a consumption tax. So
we should make it a whole lot simpler, less bureaucracy.
So the more you make, you save you keep all of it. You only pay tax when you spend money. It's a national sales tax. And I just want to break this down for 1 second, because people say, oh, that's not going to work, because if you have a set tax rate in the United States, we have a proposal every year. It's proposal HR 25. It's been going on for 40 years now, I think. And it's called the fair tax. And the deal with and there are other schemes, but I'm just going to explain this one. It's a 23% national sales tax. This is separate from states. States can do whatever they want. We already collect sales tax at every level, because most states have them. I think 4 or 5 states don't in the United States. But it's not that hard to collect, and it's not that hard to check. So if you go buy an airplane or something expensive, you'll have to pay it. But you keep every dollar you make. So that's not a hard decision. You just figure out there's no tax on anything used. There's a conversation about whether there should be tax on rent or not, and on your mortgage payment or not, because you should pay tax on a new home, but not when the home is resold. Not for a home that you're not the first owner of, because the first owner pays the tax. So there's ways to build that into the mortgage. Okay, so that's reasonable. And then for the rent, it just kind of gets passed into the rent, because anybody who builds a new building will have to pay the tax on that, and that the renters will eventually pay that over time. So that's not a big deal. But the poor people is the problem, right? If the poor people don't make much, and then they go to the store to buy milk and groceries, and they have to pay 23, then that hurts them disproportionately. So the solution there is what they call a prebate. And a prebate, I'm going to explain it, but I don't want people to confuse this with basic income. Universal basic income. The prebate is that they send a check every month to every American or every UK citizen, whatever, for a certain amount of money that helps get them over that. So I think that I forgot to check, but let's say it's $1,000 a month. Everybody gets it. Everybody over 18 gets this check, or every family of 5 gets their certain amount. They get the check. It's every 2 weeks, so you can't exactly spend it all on booze on the first week, and screw it up. But because that's important to poor people, it equals it out. And it's not important to rich people, but they get it anyway, because everybody gets it. And, by using electronic accounts and apps and software, it's not hard to make sure you do it. It's kind of like having everybody registered to vote, every citizen, which would be, another thing. So it's compensated for by the prebate, and then everybody just pays a flat 23%. You can learn much more about this. It's at fairtax.org.
Fairtax.org. Okay.
And I'm not actually promoting that one, although I like it. There are others, but I think even the worst of those would probably be better than what we have now.
Yep.
It's a concept that people should think about. We don't have to have an income tax.
No.
Or an income tax department.
No. And Keir Starlin and his WEF government are using the tax to impoverish people further. We're going to be taxing pensioners. The state pension.
Oh, it's just going to...
Which is where it comes in as a social control, and how the British used it in India, salt tax, the poll tax under Thatcher. And you may not know, David, but I'm actually actively involved in promoting, in the UK, lawful tax protest. bit.ly/lawful tax protest, but also bit.ly/make war history, because according to the International Criminal Court Act and the Terrorism Act, it is illegal to give any money to any agency that is engaging in genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity, and acts of terrorism, or facilitating the funding of those. And Britain's involvement in Ukraine, in Israel, in Yemen violates those statutes.
Yeah.
This is lobbying for peace. So I invite people to take a look at that. And at the very least, even if you're not necessarily anti-war like me, well, you get to keep some of your money to deal with the living crisis and how they want us importing abroad. And
another way to say it is that you can decide yourself if you want to give money to Ukraine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why do you have to pay it to the government and they decide?
A very good point.
Right. Yeah. Right. Okay. Number 8. Ding! I'm not sure if it's 8. The United Nations, the World Economic Forum, and the World Bank all together. The globalists.
Don't say no. They're all benevolent. They care about.
It's hard to say which is the bigger scam, but this is a giant scam. The whole thing.
No, David.
All together.
They
Throw the
care
whole
about
thing
us.
away. We got 17 acres of land in downtown Manhattan that could be put to much better use. And we've got conferences. You know, there's a climate conference more than one every single day, every year. That's just climate.
That must be
Every day.
That must be so good for the climate.
They're in the conference business. But then when they go to with the white helmets and they go to try to sort out the wars, they don't do any better, and often they start the damn wars.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the child trafficking that they
Let's
connect
get those guys out. This is about a $5 billion budget that is tiny compared to the other scams, but the leverage on this is just huge.
Yeah, absolutely huge.
This is one of the most important $5 billion to delete. Right? Make those people get real jobs.
Yep.
How many people work in the office in the United Nations that is responsible for managing claims by whistleblowers and basically crises, internal affairs, it's called, an internal office to watch. It's the watchdog office that watches everybody in the United Nations. That's 350 full-time people.
Wow.
Yeah, their annual budget is about $30 million.
Because of all the scams going on within that.
Because of all the stuff they have to deal with internally. That's just internal. Yeah, right. Right. And there's a record on their track record on whistleblowers is appalling. They attack whistleblowers. I've got a whole blog post on this at cuttingthroughthenoise.net. That's my get rid of the ESG's website. The ESG is another pox on humanity.
Yeah.
And it goes on and on. And they treat whistleblowers viciously. They have plenty of money to go after whistleblowers, and they do.
Okay, this could be a longer conversation at some point.
This is again, we're just sticking with the top. I think it's 9 because I didn't come up with a 10th one.
I might have a 10th one as a bonus. I get to offer you one.
I'll take it. Okay. I got 2 more to go. You want to go or you want to do yours?
Yep.
Science.
Science? That's so unscientific of you. Don't you follow the science, David?
I'm so sorry. I don't follow the science. I don't believe the scientists. Richard Feynman said, science is the belief in the ignorance of experts.
Science is in the ignorance of experts. Okay. Yeah.
Do not trust the experts. The experts are almost always highly paid and wrong. Right? So even Wikipedia in contentious science areas is completely manipulated. There are people who get paid all day to manage those science pages. I'm not kidding. Science is a fully corrupted industry with kleptocracy as its main operating motive.
Okay, I'm going to suggest something.
Yes.
And it's to do with the matter of integrity and being, ontology, right? The foundation of our interactions with each other, and this may be in the money video that we're going to do, the theft starts there when fiat currency gets printed and people's energy gets devalued.
Yeah, let's save that for the other one.
Okay.
Anything to do with money printing, we're going to discuss the other one. All right. So in 2015, some people did a meta study, and the meta study people are great. They are statisticians, not scientists, and they looked at the review. They looked at all the literature of 7. Let me see, get it right here. Of 900 peer-reviewed studies published on breast cancer. 900 peer-reviewed studies, and they found that all of those studies were based on a cell line from skin cells, not breast cancer. Yeah, no, they got the wrong data from the wrong place, and it got forwarded on and on and on, and they kept saying that these skin cell data is breast, cancer breast tissue data, and they use that for 900 peer-reviewed papers. And then that came out in the 2015 review. And between 2015 and 2022, guess how many more breast cancer papers, peer-reviewed breast cancer papers were created based on the same skin cell germ lines?
And skin
Another
cells.
300. Another 300 papers came out after the 900 papers were retracted.
Wow.
Yeah, this is the unstoppable momentum of bad science.
And for people who don't know, aren't familiar, the structure and purpose and functioning of a skin cell is completely different to that of a breast cell. Completely different.
And probably had no cancer. There's just nothing, there's nothing. They wrote these beautiful papers. They got them all the journals published them, all the big journals, everything, just hook, line, and sinker. Nope, because it is an old boy network. It's a tit for tat network. It's you do me a favor, I'll do you a favor. These journals are corrupt. They're in it for the money. They like sensational headlines, most of which are wrong. So I'm going to go through one more thing. I got two more things. Here's a quote. It is simply no longer possible to believe much of the clinical research that is published or to rely on the judgment of trusted physicians or authoritative medical guidelines. I take no pleasure in this conclusion, which I reached slowly and reluctantly over my 2 decades as an editor of the New England Journal of Medicine. Marcia Angel, when she quit, wrote this because the whole thing is a house of cards. All right, now, if you don't believe me, which is fine, you need to know about a 2011 paper written by John Ioannidis, who wrote a paper called Why Most Scientific Findings Are False. And I'm going to give you a link for your viewers to watch a video by Veritasium. Do you know Veritasium, the science channel? Mm-hmm. Fantastic video explaining this paper, so you don't have to read it. He visualizes and shows. Actually, yes, more than 50% of all scientific published research is false. And in many areas, like psychology, more than 90% are just fake. The data is not enough data. The results are too weak. The statistics are horrible. And they get funded based on the story they tell about how great this research is going to be and how helpful it will be to the world. But in fact, it's not about science. It's about money. What a shock. Right? So most of the drugs we take that are approved by the regulators don't have any data behind them that has been confirmed. They're based on studies funded by drug companies that have never been confirmed. Some have, but most have not. The vast majority of drugs we take and put into our bodies today are based on 1 or 2 drug studies that are required by the regulators, and that's it. And then they close the doors and prescribe. That's a bit of a scam, wouldn't you say?
A scam. Okay.
Now, some of it might actually work, but we don't know how much. We know that probably at least half of it is placebo at best, or killing people at random. Right, and the doctors don't know. Right, so believing the peer-reviewed research is not the place to go. All right, great. So now I'm going to make sure I get you that video. I want people to see that video.
Sure.
The last one, did you do your scam, or do you want to add at the end?
Well, how many? That's 8, and you're going to do the last one, and then
I'll do the last one. It's environmentalism.
More, right? So I got
environmentalism.
Okay, 3 come to mind.
We got 2 bonus scams for you guys today, so hang in there.
That's right. So one of them is the trans agenda.
Oh my God.
Complete scam. And as a social worker, it is Munchausen syndrome by proxy, executed by the state.
It's unbelievable.
Fabricated induced illness that schools, teachers, it's massive psyop that being told to children that there's something wrong with you and you need psychological and medical intervention in order to correct it. Well, that is Munchausen syndrome by proxy on a massive scale. There is nothing about us as mammals that we should have this, right? And then what people who are, teenagers, unhappy with their bodies, chances are they've either been sexually abused or they're on the spectrum.
Or they're having a bad day, for God's sake.
They're having a bad day.
Parents are just brainwashing.
No, but the schools are doing it. They're doing it like crazy in Ireland. They're bringing it into Britain. All the WEF controlled countries, they're bringing it in order to destroy family, destroy people's sense of themselves,
unbelievable,
destroy culture, because then people don't know who they are. If I don't know whether I'm a boy or a girl, then I'm easy to manipulate. And what they need to be taught, right, David, if you're a 17-year-old or a 16-year-old or a 12-year-old and you're not sure whether you're a boy or a girl, here's the message that you need. David, are you listening?
I am. I'm going to get you a quote. Yeah, go ahead.
There's nothing wrong with you.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it.
You're medicalizing normality.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with you.
Right.
You are perfect, whole and complete. There's nothing wrong with you. That's what they need to be told. So that's a scam. That's a candidate for a scam. It's not universal. Another one, pharmaceutical medication. The whole allopathic industry, created by Rockefeller as a revenue stream for his oil products. He captured colleges and universities and medical schools and lobbied governments and destroyed traditional forms of medication. They subverted thousands and thousands of years of empirical knowledge that had been handed down through word of mouth. Complete scam. So another little one, seed oils, another scam. But I won't go into that one in detail. And then the other one, history. History.
History is a huge scam. You're right.
We've been lied to. My daughter, she part of her home education, she got really interested in Queen Victoria. So she went with this other home educating mum and her friend, her daughter, these two friends, to the local library. And they come back and she brings me this book on Queen Victoria. And she's showing me the book, and the book's talking about how the first Indian mutiny. The first Indian mutiny, when the Indians got a bit uppity with their British rulers, right? And I said to her, if you go to Pakistan and India and you read a book about that, that's the first Indian War of Independence.
Right. It's not a mutiny.
That's right. That's right. So it all depends upon who gets to write the book, who gets to write the story, and what's been distorted, and how that distortion becomes embedded in culture over time.
And textbooks.
And textbooks.
And by the way, the history teachers have no idea.
No idea.
They're just there to make sure kids take tests and don't get out of line.
Yeah. So those are a couple of, and I threw in seed oils as a bonus.
Which is another interesting conversation. Let's go. I want to go back to transgender issues because the truth is, if you look biologically, there is a tiny fraction of the percentage of human population that has various mutations that put them somewhere between fully male and fully female. Yep. And if you look really hard, you'll find people all along that way. There are very few.
Yep.
Very few, right? But you can find people with all these different combinations, but these are tiny fractions of the population. Now, here, the recent research shows that among 18 to 24-year-olds who identify as transgender has gone from 0.59%, so 0.6% in the United States, to 3.08% in 2023 in 10 years. From 0.59, which was kind of the background, okay, sure, there's 0.59. I mean, come on, the transgenderism is not fake, it's real. Yep. But so that's 8 times. It says here it has quintuple, it's increased by a factor of 5 in less than a decade. A 422% increase.
Yeah. Thank you, United Nations, World Health Organization, WHO.
And that's all coerced.
Yes.
Yeah.
Filtered.
So let's leave it here, Rich, and we'll go to environmentalism on another. We'll just break out environmentalism for a whole another day.
You're going to say that carbon dioxide isn't dangerous and isn't killing us?
Be careful now. Don't get me started.
All right. It's absolutely fabulous talking to you. Look forward to these other conversations about environmentalism and about money. You need to send me all those links, right? So people.
I will.
People get those. Or also follow David on X. And if you want coaching in terms of longevity, would you believe that David, he won't like me saying this, he's 223 years old.
Just turned. Yeah.
Yes. So he's doing really, really well.
But I'm in the gym every day, and that's what does it.
That's what does it. And also business entrepreneur. If you want any kind of coaching and support, he's a great coach in terms of your business. Reach out to him. What's the website again?
InfiniteGameOfLife.com.
Infinite Game of Life. What a game to play. Thank you, David. All the best. Bye-bye.
Take care.